You ever have one of those moments where life flips upside down, and suddenly the people who treated you like nothing are begging for your attention? Yeah, that was me. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how this story ends. But before we get to the jaw-dropping part, the one where a billionaire CEO looks my mother dead in the eye and calls me boss, I need to take you back. Back to where it all started. Growing up in the Morgan household, I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't family, I was the maid. Don't get me wrong, my parents weren't struggling. They were wealthy. We lived in a 6-bedroom house in Connecticut. Marble countertops, crystal chandeliers, the works. But none of that luxury ever felt like it belonged to me. To them, I was free labor in their mansion. Dinner, Ava, guests are coming. Laundry, Ava. Sarah needs her dress for tonight. Clean the kitchen. Ava, you know how your father hates dust. I was their child by blood, but by role. I was staff. My younger sister, Sarah, the golden one, never lifted a finger. She was the future of the family, paraded around at country club events, dressed in designer clothes my mother bought on shopping sprees. Meanwhile, I was scrubbing floors and cooking meals I rarely even got to sit down and eat. By the time I was 16, I could prepare a 5-course dinner for 20 guests with military precision. But here's the part they never realized. While I was sautéing vegetables and polishing silverware, I was also building something they couldn't see. Late nights, when the house was finally quiet, I'd sneak into my room, open my laptop, and work. At first, it was just small projects. Online freelance gigs, coding websites for local businesses, experimenting with e-commerce. But one project led to another and another, until I wasn't just making pocket change anymore. By 21, while my parents still introduced me at parties as our other daughter, Ava, she helps with the cooking, I was quietly generating 6 figures online. By 25, I'd launched a startup that was scaling fast. By 30, I was sitting on a multi-million-dollar empire, and they had no clue. Because here's the thing, I never told them. Why should I? They never asked about my life, my work, my dreams. They only cared if the roast was tender or the napkins were folded into swans. Fast forward to last Christmas Eve. That's where everything changed. It started with a phone call from my mother, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she saved for when she needed something. Ava, darling, we're hosting an extremely important dinner on Christmas Eve. Very important. Executives, investors, and a CEO you may have heard of. So of course we'll need you to prepare everything. Translation? Drop your entire life slave in the kitchen for 2 days and make us look good. Normally, I'd just grit my teeth and do it. That was the pattern, but this time was different. See, while my mother was barking orders, I was standing in a penthouse suite in Miami overlooking the ocean, finalizing the biggest deal of my career. In less than 48 hours, my company was set to partner with a global hospitality giant. And that very important CEO my mother was desperate to impress? Yeah, she was flying down to Florida to meet me. But my parents didn't know that. I let her talk. I let her list the 20 dishes she wanted, the table settings, even the timing of when the champagne should be poured. And then I said the words I'd never dared to say before. No, Mom, I won't be there. Silence. Pure, icy silence on the other end of the phone. Excuse me? She snapped. Ava, don't be ridiculous. This dinner is crucial. People are expecting a gourmet experience. You can't just... I'm not available, I cut her off. Hire a caterer. The gasp she let out could have shattered glass. A caterer? Ava, you are the caterer. This family depends on you to make us look good. No, Mom, I said slowly, savoring every word. You depend on me to serve you, but I'm done being your maid. I hung up before she could answer. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline, from freedom. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. Of course, the texts started rolling in. First, Sarah. Seriously, Ava. Mom is losing it. You better get here. Then my father. Your mother is under a lot of stress. Don't be selfish. Finally, my mother again. If you don't show up tonight, you're dead to this family. I put my phone face down, turned toward the ocean view, and whispered to myself, In 24 hours, you'll know exactly who I am. Because while they were scrambling to set a table without me, I was preparing to sign a deal that would put my name on every business headline in the country. And here's the kicker: the CEO they were dying to impress, the one they believed would never take them seriously unless I slaved in the kitchen, she wasn't flying to Connecticut for them. She was flying to Florida. For me. But I'll get to that explosive Christmas Eve disaster in the next part. For now, let me ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? Kept the peace and cooked the dinner? Or finally drawn the line after years of being treated like a servant? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all, and I want to know how you would have handled it. And if you think my parents are about to get exactly what they deserve, trust me, you're right, because this story is just getting started. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, I was exactly where I wanted to be, thousands of miles away from my parents' kitchen, sipping coffee in a hotel suite while reviewing slides for the biggest presentation of my career. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, the Morgan household was unraveling. How do I know? Because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with desperate messages. At 5:42 p.m., Sarah texted, "Ava, Mom just realized you're serious. She thought you were bluffing. The fridge is empty. The oven's cold. What the hell do we do?" I smiled. For years, I'd been their safety net. Not anymore. At 6:10 p.m., my father chimed in. "Your mother is having a breakdown. Do the right thing. Don't embarrass this family." I nearly laughed out loud. Me? Embarrass the family? No, Dad. You've been doing that all along. By 6:30 p.m., guests had started arriving. Investment bankers, attorneys, PR sharks, the type of people my parents loved to impress. But the real crown jewel, the one they were all waiting for, was Victoria Lane. Victoria Lane, billionaire CEO of Horizon Resorts. The woman whose name alone could open doors in hospitality and finance circles across the globe. The one my mother had bragged for weeks would be treated to the finest Christmas Eve dinner Connecticut had ever seen. Too bad that dinner didn't exist. At 6:57 p.m., Sarah's text got frantic. "Ava, Mom is on the phone with every restaurant in a 20-mile radius. Nobody's open. Do you realize who's coming? Victoria Lane is here. She just walked in. Mom is saying you ruined everything." And then, the one that made me snort into my champagne. "We're ordering pizza on Christmas Eve, with Victoria Lane sitting in our dining room. Do you understand what you've done?" I set my glass down, imagining the scene in perfect detail. My mother, who spent her entire life curating an image of elegance and perfection, serving Papa John's on her Waterford crystal plates. I couldn't have scripted a better karmic twist if I tried. 4:45 p.m. Another text from Sarah. "Mom's telling everyone you're mentally unstable. She's saying you abandoned us. Victoria looks disgusted. People are leaving. T2 p.m. This is a nightmare. Guests left early. Victoria barely touched the food. Mom says you're dead to her." I leaned back in my chair, the ocean waves crashing outside my window, and let myself laugh. Not a bitter laugh. A free one. For the first time, the disaster wasn't mine to clean up. Meanwhile, my reality couldn't have been more different. At 9:00 p.m., I opened my laptop and reviewed the official agenda for December 26th. Pre-dinner meeting with Horizon Resorts. 7:00 p.m., boardroom presentation. 9:00 a.m., contract signing. Pending final approval. Clause 12.4 jumped out at me. CEO presence required. Victoria Lane herself had insisted on that. She didn't want figureheads. She wanted founders, builders, people like me. I glanced at my inbox. 14 new emails from her executive team. They were excited, prepared, eager. And then one directly from Victoria. "Looking forward to finally meeting you in person, Ava. Your reputation precedes you." The irony nearly made me choke. While my mother was in Connecticut blaming me for her humiliation, Victoria Lane was hours away from shaking my hand and signing a multi-million-dollar contract. By midnight, the fallout in Connecticut had reached nuclear levels, and missed calls from my mother, 28 from Sarah, even 5 from my usually silent father. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened a draft of the Forbes feature scheduled to go live on December 27th. The headline? From Maid to Mogul, How Ava Morgan Built an Empire. Without family money. My photo was right there on the cover mock-up. Confident, professional. Nothing like the invisible family servant they'd reduced me to. And the timing? Perfect. By the time my family pieced everything together, it would be too late. My face would be on every newsstand in America. But here's where fate really twisted the knife. At 12:47 a.m., my assistant messaged me, "Heads up. Victoria just left Connecticut. She's flying down for tomorrow's dinner." That's right. The CEO my parents thought they were impressing over pizza and excuses was about to walk into a luxury resort and discover the truth. I closed my laptop, heart pounding, mind racing, because in less than 24 hours, Victoria Lane would realize that the mentally unstable failure my mother trashed at her Christmas Eve party was actually the CEO she'd been chasing for 2 years. And trust me, when that truth hit the table, it didn't just explode, it detonated. Christmas morning felt surreal. While my parents were probably still licking their wounds from serving Domino's on fine china, I was ironing my best suit, rehearsing lines in the mirror, and preparing to step into the biggest room of my life. By evening, I walked into Horizon's luxury resort, confidence radiating off me. Every detail was perfect. My presentation deck, the financials, the market analysis. This was the contract that would change everything. And then she walked in. Victoria Lane, poised, sharp. The kind of presence that could silence an entire room without raising her voice. She shook my hand firmly. "Ava Morgan," she said. "Finally. I've been waiting to meet the mind behind Stellar Concepts." I smiled, steady as ever, but inside adrenaline surged, because I knew she'd just spent Christmas Eve in my parents' disaster zone. We sat down. Dinner was served, and before we even touched the main course, Victoria leaned in. "You won't believe the party I attended last night in Connecticut," she began. Shaking her head, my heart skipped a beat. Here it comes. The hostess, Margaret Morgan, I think her name was, had promised an extravagant, home-cooked Christmas Eve dinner prepared by her daughter. I sipped my water slowly. Oh, yes, except when I arrived. The kitchen was empty. Not a single dish prepared, and after an hour of chaos, they served us pizza. I raised my eyebrows politely. That must have been awkward. Awkward? She laughed. It was catastrophic. The entire time, Margaret ranted about her unreliable, unemployable daughter. She called her unstable. Said she was basically a live-in maid who had abandoned them at the worst time. She shook her head again, clearly disgusted. I've been to bad parties before, but that was legendary. I held her gaze, my pulse steady, my voice even. Sounds humiliating. You have no idea. But fate wasn't done playing. The very next morning, December 26th, I stood in Horizon's glass-walled boardroom, my presentation already dazzling the executives. The contract sat on the table, waiting for signatures. Everything was going perfectly, until Victoria's assistant rushed in holding an iPad. "Ms. Lane, you'll want to see this," she said breathlessly. Victoria took the tablet, her brow furrowing. Then her eyes widened. Her jaw actually dropped. She turned the screen toward me, and there it was, a photo from my parents' dining room wall. A family portrait from last Thanksgiving. My mother, my father, Sarah, all smiling in the foreground. And there I was, barely visible in the back, like furniture. The LinkedIn post beneath it read, "When your star hostess orders pizza on Christmas Eve. Lesson: not everyone can deliver on their promises." Victoria blinked at me. "Ava, this is your family?" Silence fell across the boardroom. Every executive froze, waiting for my response. "Yes," I said finally, my voice calm, deliberate. "Margaret Morgan is my mother." The room erupted in whispers. Victoria leaned back, stunned. "So, the daughter your mother called unstable, unemployed, a family servant, was you?" "Yes." The legal counsel set down his pen, eyes wide. "Wait, the same woman who signed the Stellar Concepts proposal in front of us just now? Is the daughter they reduced to a maid last night?" "Yes." Victoria stood pacing to the window, processing. "Let me get this straight. Your family doesn't know you're the CEO of Stellar Concepts. They've spent years treating you like unpaid labor, and last night, in front of me, they trashed you publicly while serving delivery pizza. When you could have catered the entire evening flawlessly. I nodded once. Correct. There was a beat of silence. Then Victoria burst out laughing. Not polite laughter. Real, unrestrained, unbelieving laughter. Oh my God, she said, wiping her eyes. That woman spent the entire evening humiliating her own daughter. And that daughter is the exact CEO I've been chasing for a partnership for 2 years. The executives started chuckling too, shaking their heads in disbelief. The irony was too much to ignore. Victoria turned back to me, her smile sharp. Ava, you may be the most fascinating entrepreneur I've ever met, but the drama wasn't finished. The assistant returned, holding up the iPad again. Ms. Lane, one more update. Forbes just dropped their 40 under 40 cover reveal. She projected it onto the boardroom screen, and there I was. Professional headshot, confident smile. Headline blazing across the top. From Maid to Mogul, how Ava Morgan built a multi-million-dollar empire without family money. The room went silent again. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't their servant. I was exactly what I had always been. The boss. Victoria didn't waste a second. The ink on the Horizon contract wasn't even dry before she pulled out her phone. Margaret Morgan? She said sweetly when the line connected. Yes, it's Victoria Lane. I was at your unforgettable dinner last night. I watched the executive smirk, trying to look professional while clearly hanging on every word. Yes, that's right. I just wanted to let you know something, Victoria continued. She locked eyes with me and grinned like a cat playing with its prey. The daughter you called unemployed? The one you said was unstable, unreliable, better suited to maid work than to real jobs? I just signed a multi-million-dollar contract with her company. Dead silence on the other end. Then Victoria added, slowly, deliberately, Margaret, your daughter is my boss now. The color drained from my mother's face. I could imagine it perfectly. She probably dropped her wine glass or clutched her pearls in disbelief. The entire boardroom erupted in laughter. Even the normally stiff CFO let out a sharp chuckle. Victoria hung up without another word, tossed her phone on the table and raised her glass. To Ava Morgan, she said. The only person in that entire family worth respecting. Crystal clinked around the room. And in that moment, I felt something shift permanently inside me. For the first time, I was no longer a shadow in my own story. I was the storm. The fallout came fast and brutal. Within hours, my phone lit up with texts from Sarah. Sarah. Ava, what did you do? Sarah. Mom is hysterical. Sarah. Victoria Lane is telling everyone you're the CEO of Stellar Concepts. Sarah. People are calling me nonstop. This isn't funny. I didn't reply. Because for 15 years they hadn't listened to me. Why should I listen now? By evening, the gossip had exploded across Connecticut's country club circuit. Margaret Morgan, queen of catered soiree, had hosted the most catastrophic Christmas Eve in living memory. Guests whispered about the pizza, about her ranting, about the revelation that her failure daughter had been building an empire behind her back. My inbox told a different story. Invitations from investors, emails from industry magazines wanting interviews, even an inquiry from Food Network. My success was spreading like wildfire. Their shame was too. The first direct call came at midnight. My mother. Her voice was trembling. Ava, how could you do this to us? To you? I asked calmly. Or to your reputation? You humiliated us in front of our friends. Everyone is calling, asking why we didn't know our own daughter was successful. I let her words hang. Then I asked quietly, Mom, did you ever ask? Silence. You assumed I was a failure because that was easier than seeing me, I continued. For 5 years, you've introduced me as unemployed. Never once asked about my work, my home, my life. I wasn't invisible, Mom. You just chose not to look. Her breath hitched on the other end. We're your family. We deserve... Family doesn't treat each other like servants. I cut in sharply. Call me when you're ready to meet Ava Morgan, the CEO, not Ava the maid. And I hung up. The consequences didn't stop at humiliation. Within 48 hours, Sarah's PR firm lost its biggest client, the same Horizon subsidiary that had just signed with me. Victoria Lane personally told them, "We don't partner with firms whose founders lack family values." $500,000 gone. My mother was quietly removed from 2 charity boards, officially for restructuring, unofficially for being the woman who served Domino's on Waterford Crystal while trashing her CEO daughter. Even my father, who had been silent all my life, couldn't escape. His golf buddies cornered him, demanding to know how he hadn't realized his own daughter was a millionaire. The real twist came when Forbes dropped my feature. The headline screamed across every screen in my parents' circle, "From Maid to Mogul, Ava Morgan built an empire, without a dollar of family money." Paragraph 3 held the line that destroyed them. Her family assumed she was unemployed. It was easier to build an empire in silence than to fight their assumptions. My mother called again that night, crying openly. "You've destroyed this family," she sobbed. "No, Mom," I said softly. "I've finally built my own life, and for the first time, I don't need a single thing from you." Then I ended the call. While their empire of status crumbled, mine soared. Forbes went viral. My inbox flooded with requests. Within a week, I had contracts lined up worth more than anything my family's connections could have offered me in 15 years. And everywhere they went, people whispered not about their reputation, but about me, the maid they'd dismissed, the CEO they couldn't claim. 3 months later, I agreed to meet them, not in their mansion, not in their country club, but in Manhattan, in a quiet restaurant I chose. Neutral territory. My territory. When they walked in, I barely recognized them. My mother looked smaller, her imperiousness gone. My father seemed older, fragile even, and Sarah, once smug and untouchable, avoided my eyes like a guilty child. I let them sit. Then I placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "These," I said, "are my terms." They leaned in. My mother's eyes flickered over the words. Equal respect or no contact. No more servant treatment, ever. Public acknowledgement of my success. A genuine apology. Not just words therapy, for all of us. "This isn't negotiable," I said firmly. "If we rebuild, it's as equals. I'll be your daughter, not your maid. Your sister, not your staff." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Sarah's voice cracked the silence. "I was jealous," she whispered. "Mom made me feel special by making you feel small." I let her. "I see now how sick that was." She swallowed hard. "I'm in therapy. They said, we created a family system where someone had to be the scapegoat, and you got assigned that role." Her eyes shimmered. "I'm sorry, Ava, truly." My mother's hands trembled on the table. For the first time in 15 years, tears slipped down her face. "Not just Christmas Eve," she whispered. "All of it. The years of blindness. The way I turned you into a servant because I couldn't bear the thought that you might outgrow the life I planned for you." Her voice cracked. "I see it now. You were never small. I made you small, and I'm sorry." I looked at her, at Sarah, at my father, who for once didn't interrupt, just sat with the weight of his silence. "I'll consider rebuilding," I said carefully. "But remember this, I'm not coming back to the same family. If we move forward, it's on my terms." They nodded. For the first time, they listened. And then, because I couldn't resist, I added, "Oh, and Mom, if you ever want Stellar Concepts to cater another event, you'll be paying full price." For the first time in months, she actually smiled. Fair. 6 months later, we had our first true family dinner, not in their mansion. In my home, the 2-bedroom condo overlooking Central Park they'd never bothered to ask about. But I didn't cook. Not anymore. That was a boundary I'd never cross again. My team from Stellar Concepts catered the dinner, dressed professionally, serving with elegance. My parents and sister sat at my dining table, being served not by me, but by employees who called me boss. The role reversal was so sharp, you could feel it in the air. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. I raised my glass. "I want to make something clear," I said. My voice was steady, strong, the way it had always been inside me. Only now, everyone else could hear it too. Success doesn't need permission. Self-worth doesn't require validation. And respect? Respect is non-negotiable. My mother nodded. She'd been in therapy for 4 months, even standing at the country club to publicly admit she had been blind to my success. It didn't restore her reputation, but it started to restore our relationship. Sarah's PR firm had nearly collapsed. Then, humbly, she asked if Stellar Concepts might consider hiring her for our media. I didn't dismiss her. I told her to submit a proposal like everyone else. She did, and it was good. For the first time, she stood on her own merit. My father had become my unexpected ally, finally finding his voice. Now, every time he introduced me, it was with genuine pride. This is my daughter, Ava Morgan, CEO, but the biggest change wasn't them, it was me. I no longer dimmed my light to make anyone comfortable. I no longer accepted scraps of validation, or played the role of servant to keep the peace. Stellar Concepts had grown to 5 cities. My team had doubled to 100 employees. The Food Network documentary aired, Invisible to Invaluable, the Ava Morgan story. And every morning I looked in the mirror and reminded myself, I am Ava Morgan, CEO, not the family maid. Never again. And to you watching this, remember this truth. Your value does not decrease because someone else fails to see it. Your worth is not defined by their blindness. Respect is non-negotiable. So know your worth. And then add tax.